The sizzle of ribeyes on the grill used to mean something. It meant comfort, tradition, the kind of unspoken bond built over 10 years of dinners, scraped plates, and shared bedtime stories. But tonight, Elliot Walker could feel the shift in the air, like the pressure drop before a storm. He stood over the grill in his backyard, beer sweating in one hand, tongs in the other, the late August heat clinging to his shirt. Lucas was chasing fireflies barefoot across the lawn, giggling like only a 6-year-old could. And Lydia was staring through him from the patio chair like a woman about to confess to a crime she thought she could rationalize. "Elliot," she said, voice steady but cold. "I need to talk to you." He didn't even turn his head. "You're talking now. I've decided I need some space. A break. A trial separation." The words didn't register at first. Not because he didn't hear them, he just didn't believe them. The first thing that came out of his mouth wasn't a question. It was a fact. "Well, I'll be damned." He flipped the steaks without looking, letting the silence chew through the air. Lydia stood now, arms crossed, jaw set. "I've already made arrangements," she added. "I'll be staying at Maya's place, just for a little while. We can explain it to Lucas together tonight." That's when Elliot turned. Slowly. No raised voice. No begging. Just the dead stare of a man whose fuse had burned all the way down to the powder. "You already lined up your little escape plan, huh?" His voice was low and sharp. "Guess I was just the last to find out." "It's not like that." "Sure it's not," he said, walking toward her, eyes locked. "You didn't need space. You needed options. And now you've got M. I hope Maya has room for your half of the furniture, because I'm not boxing up a damn thing." "I thought you'd understand," she said, voice trembling just slightly. "You've been so distant lately. You don't even try anymore." Elliot laughed. A bitter, dry thing. "You want me to hold your hand while you burn down the house? Nah. I'll draw up legal separation papers first thing Monday. Hell, I might just drive over to Grant's tonight, have him prep it before the steaks finish. If you're gonna walk, at least make it official." "Elliot, you don't get to play the victim," he snapped, stepping closer. "You had this planned. You picked a date, packed a bag, lined up your story, and looped in Maya before you even looked me in the eye. You don't want space. You want freedom with training wheels." She flinched at that. Lucas ran up then, holding a mason jar full of flickering bugs. "Dad, look." Elliot dropped to one knee and smiled at his son. The kind of smile that takes effort when your world is crumbling. "Nice catch, buddy. Go put it on the porch. Let's keep him safe." Lucas took off, barefoot on the brick steps, and Elliot stood slowly, returning to the woman who no longer felt like his wife. "You tell him whatever version helps you sleep, Lydia," he said. "But don't expect me to cover for you. Not this time. I still care about you, Elliot." "No, you don't. You care about not being the villain in your own story." He turned back to the grill, pulled the steaks off with calm precision, and walked past her without another word. Inside, he grabbed his laptop, opened his email, and typed one line to his attorney. "Grant needs a 60-day conditional separation. If she doesn't come back or contest it, I want it finalized as divorce. Start drafting tonight." Then he poured himself a bourbon, rare for him on a weeknight, and sat by the window while Lydia packed her bags upstairs. Outside, Lucas was still watching the fireflies. Inside, Elliot had just stopped hoping and started preparing. Elliot sat across from Lucas at the local diner, a quiet little spot with sticky menus and booths that had seen better years. It was the kind of place where the waitress knew his coffee order by heart, where he and Lydia used to bring Lucas for pancakes after Saturday soccer. But tonight, the silence between the clink of silverware felt heavier than the meatloaf on his plate. Lucas was quiet too, stabbing at his mac and cheese without much appetite. "Is Mom mad at you?" he asked finally. Elliot forced a swallow past the knot in his throat. "No, buddy. Sometimes grown-ups just need time apart to think. It's not your fault. Has nothing to do with you. But she didn't even say bye when we left." Elliot looked away. "She will next time. I promise." He didn't believe it, but Lucas needed something to hold on to. When they pulled into the driveway just past 8 o'clock, the porch light was off. That was her move. Lydia always left it on when she was home. Now the house sat dark and quiet, like it knew she'd taken something with her when she left. Elliot stepped inside. Her scent was already fading. The closet was half empty. The master bathroom was stripped bare of her lotions and curling irons. And the family photo that once sat on her nightstand, Lydia, Elliot, and Lucas at the beach, was gone. She'd packed up her bags and, without a word, taken the piece with her. Elliot sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the empty pillow. It was only one room in one house, but it echoed like a cathedral. He thought back to the start. They met in an accounting seminar, both fresh out of school. She wore a blue blouse and asked too many questions. He liked that. They married fast, within a year, and settled into routines like puzzle pieces clicking into place. But somewhere in the past 18 months, things began slipping. It started after she lost weight. 40 pounds gone by sheer force of will. He was proud of her, supported her through it. But what he didn't expect was the new wardrobe, the gym selfies, and the way she started glancing just a bit too long at her reflection. Then came the Christmas party. That night was supposed to be fun. She wore a red dress that drew eyes. Elliot noticed the way she danced a little too close with one of the younger associates. When he mentioned it on the ride home, she laughed it off, said he was being paranoid. But he wasn't. Not really. He just didn't want to believe it. And then there was Maya, always around, always whispering about freedom, about women rediscovering themselves. Single, bitter, and barely concealing her resentment toward marriage. Lydia soaked it up like gospel. The girls' nights got longer. The silence between Elliot and Lydia is deeper. He poured himself a glass of water in the kitchen and stood in the hallway outside Lucas's room, listening to his son breathe as he drifted to sleep. That little boy, his whole world, was in the middle of a war he didn't start and didn't deserve. Elliot leaned his forehead against the doorframe and exhaled slowly. There was no yelling tonight, no fight, just the weight of knowing that the person who promised to stand beside him had already been halfway out the door for months. Back in the bedroom, he opened his laptop again. Another email to Grant. Also draft a custody proposal. I want a full primary with structured visitation. Lydia's moved out without discussion, and I want to set the precedent before she tries to spin this. He closed the laptop with finality. Whatever romantic notions he'd once clung to, the ideas of fixing this, of waiting it out, died somewhere between that front door and her empty half of the closet. Let her play the victim to Maya and whoever else she confides in. Elliot wasn't going to sit around hoping she found her way back. She didn't just leave. She walked away like it was part of a long-laid plan. And now, so would he. By Monday morning, Elliot Walker was already 3 steps ahead. He arrived at Grant McKinley's law office a full 30 minutes before it opened, sipping black coffee in his truck, watching the sleepy strip mall stir to life. The sun hadn't fully broken through the gray, and neither had his mood. But there was clarity now, cold, sharp, and unshakable. When the lights flickered on inside the law office, Elliot stepped out and walked through the door before the receptionist could finish unlocking it. "Mr. Walker," Grant said, waving him in. "Didn't expect to see you so soon." Elliot didn't sit. "I want it airtight. 60-day trial separation clause. If she doesn't contest or move to reconcile, we file for divorce without discussion." Grant nodded, already pulling up a template. "Custody? Full primary?" Elliot replied flatly. "Lucas stays with me. She can visit on weekends every other week. No overnight guests while he's there. No moving him. No emotional leverage. None." "Understood." Elliot leaned forward, voice lower now. "And I want all financials locked down. Cancel her insurance. Remove her from all accounts, credit cards, anything she could tap into." "You expect her to challenge you?" Elliot stared at the framed law diploma behind Grant's head. "I expect her to act like she's the one who's owed something. So yeah, button every damn thing up." By noon, Grant had the paperwork started and a private investigator on retainer. Elliot didn't need evidence yet, but he wanted to be ready if Lydia made this dirty. And she would. That gut feeling wasn't going away. Back home, the first thing he did was change the locks. Not out of spite, out of necessity. She'd moved out. That wasn't her home anymore. The Ring doorbell was reset. Passwords changed. He pulled the spare key from its spot under the flower pot and threw it into the trash with a satisfying clatter. Then he drove to the bank. By dinner, Lydia was locked out of every account with his name on it. The silence in the house felt different now. Less hollow, more secure. Lucas was watching cartoons, belly full of microwaved mac and cheese, unaware of the battlefield his father had just mapped out in legal ink and insurance policies. Elliot sat at the kitchen table and opened his email again. A new message from Grant. PI assigned. My name's Rick Danner. Discreet, licensed, and very thorough. I'll keep you updated. Good. Because if there was another man in this story, Elliot wanted a name, a face, and a timestamp. He didn't want to go looking for reasons to hate Lydia. But he also wasn't about to be the last one to know. 3 days later, Lydia stormed into his office. The receptionist barely had time to buzz him before Lydia barreled through the door. All high heels, perfume, and rage. You canceled my health insurance? She snapped. You froze our accounts? Elliot didn't look up from his monitor. You're not a dependent anymore. You moved out, remember? Her voice climbed. You don't get to just erase me, Elliot. Now he stood, calm, measured, dominant. I'm not erasing anything. I'm protecting myself. You left me. You packed your bags and decided to start a new life. Fine. But you don't get to have 1 foot in my house and 1 foot in Maya's guest room while draining my checking account and pretending we're still partners. She scoffed. This isn't what I wanted. It was supposed to be space, not war. He stepped closer, voice quiet but lethal. War? No, Lydia. War is messy. This is clean. This is called drawing a line. You think this makes you strong? She hissed. You think cutting me out is going to make Lucas love you more? Elliot leaned in, calm as ever. Lucas doesn't need to love me more. He just needs to see what it looks like when a man gets hurt and doesn't turn into a doormat. Lydia blinked, mouth slightly open, like she didn't recognize the man standing in front of her. He nodded toward the door. Now, unless you've got an appointment, you can leave. Or I'll have security escort you. She left without another word. Elliot sat back down, straightened his tie, and reopened the spreadsheet on his screen. The same hands that used to hold her waist now moved numbers and contracts like chess pieces. She chose the distance. He chose the defense. And now the clock was ticking. The ad was simple. Seeking a live-in nanny. 1 child. Calm, stable environment. Experience required. Background check is mandatory. Elliot hadn't planned to hire anyone. At first, he thought he could do it all: work, cook, get Lucas to and from school, keep the house from falling apart. But after 3 straight days of missed deadlines, soggy cereal dinners, and a meltdown over lost soccer cleats, he knew something had to give. That's when Ivy Brooks walked through the door. She was 23, quiet but self-assured. Former daycare worker, current early childhood education student, and, as Lucas later put it, not boring. She wore a navy blouse and slacks. No heavy makeup, no rehearsed smiles. Just calm energy and sharp eyes that scanned the room with purpose. Lucas took to her instantly. They sat on the floor of the living room with Legos while Elliot watched from the kitchen, arms crossed, unsure how the stranger had just walked into their chaos and made it look like routine. You've done this before, he said as Ivy got up to pour juice without asking where the glasses were. She shrugged. Kids don't care about your resume. They just want consistency. Someone who actually listens. He liked that. No fluff, no performance. By the end of the week, Ivy had moved into the guest room. Her contract was clean salary, hours, no crossing lines. She made no assumptions, no emotional entanglements. Just steady presence and unwavering attention to Lucas's needs. But what surprised Elliot most wasn't how she helped Lucas. It was how she quieted the noise in his own mind. Evenings that once echoed with Lydia's absence now felt stable. Dinner happened on time. Homework got done. The dishes didn't pile up. And when Elliot came home late from meetings, he'd find Lucas in pajamas, tucked in, and Ivy reading quietly in the living room with a cup of mint tea. No chaos, no drama, just a rhythm he hadn't felt in years. One Saturday, as the three of them sat on the back porch eating grilled cheese and tomato soup, Lucas blurted out, "Can Ivy come to the soccer game next weekend?" Elliot looked at her, unsure how to answer. Ivy just smiled and said, "Only if your dad says it's okay." Elliot nodded. "Yeah, that'd be fine." Later that night, when Lucas was asleep and Ivy was heading to her room, she paused in the hallway. "You don't have to explain anything to me, Elliot. I know things are complicated. I'm here for him. That's all." He appreciated that. The respect, the boundaries, but even he couldn't deny the undercurrent that was growing. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was something steadier than that. Something clean. She didn't ask questions about Lydia. Didn't pry. Didn't offer unsolicited advice. And in a world where everyone seemed eager to weigh in, Ivy's silence was a balm. And maybe, just maybe, it was her presence that let him breathe again. Lydia, meanwhile, was going the other direction. Rick, the PI, had sent a few updates already: club outings, selfies with Maya and other friends, a couple of flirtatious run-ins with random guys. No solid proof of cheating. Not yet. But Elliot wasn't looking for fire. Smoke was enough. What struck him most was how different she looked. The woman he used to hold at night now looked like someone desperate to prove she didn't need anyone. The fake smiles. The loud outfits. The social media posts are full of motivational quotes and empty hashtags. He didn't miss her. Not anymore. But he did pity her. One night, after Lucas had gone to bed, Elliot stood outside on the back deck, nursing a glass of bourbon, when Ivy stepped out with her tea. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. He shook his head. "I keep thinking about how everything got so complicated, and how little of it was necessary." Ivy leaned on the railing next to him. "Sometimes people confuse self-discovery with self-destruction." He looked at her. "You always speak in fortune cookie wisdom?" She smirked. "Only when I'm right." They stood there in silence, the kind that doesn't demand to be filled. And for the first time in weeks, Elliot felt something unfamiliar in his chest. It wasn't hope. It was control. Elliot didn't celebrate wins often. In his line of work, tax compliance and overseas logistics, most victories were boring and buried in spreadsheets. But this one was different. He'd just closed a multimillion-dollar deal with a European shipping firm that promised 5 years of guaranteed revenue. It was the kind of deal that came with a handshake, a wire transfer, and the kind of satisfaction you didn't toast alone. So he made a decision. He rented a black stretch limo. Not for the show, for the statement. Ivy was hesitant at first. "You really don't have to include me, Elliot. You've done more for me and Lucas in 3 months than some people did in years," he replied. "You're coming." Lucas beamed when he saw the car pull up in front of the house. "Are we famous now?" he asked, eyes wide. Elliot laughed. "Just for tonight." Ivy wore one of Lydia's old dresses, the only thing Elliot had let her keep from the donation pile. A simple black cocktail dress, forgotten in the back of the closet, still with the tag on. Ivy asked permission before wearing it, and Elliot's answer was short and simple. "It looks better on you." They arrived at Stonebridge, the high-end steakhouse in the heart of downtown. The maitre d' knew Elliot by name now, something that still felt strange to a man who used to eat most of his meals reheated from Tupperware. They sat in a private booth. Ivy sipped wine. Lucas colored the kids' menu. Elliot exhaled for the first time in weeks. Meanwhile, less than a block away, Lydia stood on the sidewalk outside a bar with Maya and 2 other friends. Dressed in sequins and heels too high for walking, she was laughing, loudly, too loudly, until her eyes locked on the limo parked in front of Stonebridge. At first, she didn't think it was him. Then she saw the hostess open the restaurant door. And there they were. Lucas in his little blazer. Elliot in a tailored navy suit. Ivy in her dress, her old dress. She watched them laugh as they slid into the limo, Ivy's hand gently guiding Lucas in. She saw the way Elliot rested his hand on Ivy's lower back. Not possessive, not showy, just natural. Lydia stood frozen. Maya was still talking, but the words were distant, muffled. The air around her seemed to vanish. "Hey!" Maya nudged her. "You okay?" But Lydia didn't answer. That should have been her night. That should have been her family in that limo. But she'd walked away. She told herself it was about space, growth, freedom. But the truth was right there on four wheels with tinted windows, pulling into traffic and disappearing into the city lights. Back in the limo, Lucas had already fallen asleep against Ivy's shoulder. Elliot looked at them, this unlikely pairing of calm and trust, and felt something he hadn't dared feel in months. Peace. Ivy caught him looking and smiled. "What?" He shook his head, smirking. "Just realizing. This night turned out better than I imagined." "No regrets?" she asked quietly. He looked out the window, past the lights, past the places he used to go with Lydia. "Only that I didn't take the keys back sooner." The car rolled forward. Behind them, Lydia stood on the sidewalk, still pretending she had somewhere to be. The club pulsed with neon red and thumping bass, the kind of place where eye contact lingered longer than it should and secrets dissolved in the sweat of strangers. Lydia stood at the edge of the dance floor, holding a cocktail she didn't remember ordering, laughing too hard at something too dumb. It was Maya's idea, of course. Another healing night out. Another excuse to wear something short, drink something expensive, and pretend that everything hadn't unraveled because of her own hand. "Girl, that guy has been staring at you for 10 minutes, Maya whispered, nudging her shoulder toward a man at the bar. He looked early 30s, tanned, and had too many teeth in his smile. The kind of man who knew how to lean just right, knew the right angles and the right lies. Lydia's type now, apparently. She made eye contact, smirked, and walked over. The drinks flowed fast. His name was Ethan, or Evan. It didn't matter. What mattered was that he made her feel seen, sexy, young, desired. He leaned in close. "So, are you here with anyone?" She glanced over at Maya, then back at him. "No," she said. "Not anymore." 1 hour and 2 tequilas later, they were kissing against the bathroom hallway wall. His hands were everywhere. Hers weren't far behind. The hallway led to the side door and then his loft, apparently. Close. Private. Lydia followed him out, her heels clacking against the wet pavement. She made it as far as Uber. That's where she hesitated. Not out of loyalty, out of shame. Because when Ethan leaned in and kissed her again, she didn't feel powerful. She didn't feel desired. She felt cheap. Lydia pulled back suddenly, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. "I can't," she said. "I'm sorry." He raised an eyebrow. "Are you kidding me?" She turned and walked back toward the club without answering, heels wobbling slightly as regret finally outran the tequila. She never saw the man across the street in the parked sedan, camera lens pointed straight at the sidewalk. Rick Danner, Elliot's PI, didn't need audio to tell the story. The photos were clear enough. Close dancing, hands wandering, kissing against the wall, and her following him toward the car. She didn't cross the final line. But in Elliot's world, she didn't have to. The next morning, Elliot opened the encrypted folder Rick had sent and watched the still images flip past like a slideshow of clarity. Frame 1. Lydia and Ethan pressed against the hallway wall. Frame 2. His hand halfway up her dress. Frame 3. Lydia laughing, leaning into the kiss. Frame 4. The two walking toward the car. He closed the file, poured himself a cup of coffee. No shaking, no yelling, just that slow-burning anger again. Refined now, cold and clean. He forwarded the files to Grant with a short message. "Catalog these. We're finalizing soon." But he didn't send the divorce trigger that day. Not yet, because part of him wanted her to make the next move. That night, after Lucas went to sleep and Ivy was folding laundry, Elliot sat across from her at the kitchen table. "You okay?" she asked gently. "Yeah," he lied. "Just closing some chapters." Ivy didn't press. She didn't need to. She just reached across the table and slid her fingers over his. Not tightly, not intimately. Just enough to say, "I'm here." And Elliot sat back, letting the silence work its way through the room. He wasn't going to confront Lydia. He wasn't going to throw the evidence in her face or demand apologies she wasn't capable of giving. No, he was going to do something far more permanent. He was going to leave without needing to explain why, because the truth was already written. In camera flashes, legal papers, and every quiet moment where she wasn't there for their son. She'd made her choice. Now he would make his. By the time the 60th day approached, Elliot wasn't angry anymore. Not in the way he used to be. The rage that once gripped his chest every time Lydia texted without apology or skipped her visit with Lucas had cooled into something more potent. Clarity. The clock hadn't just been ticking for the separation agreement. It had been ticking for his exit plan. It started with a simple question over dinner, one Ivy didn't expect. "Have you ever been to Portugal?" She blinked. "Only in pictures." "Why?" Elliot leaned back in his chair. "I've been offered a directorship in Lisbon. Same company, bigger scope. Lucas can enroll in international school. And the best part, comes with a beach view apartment. 3 bedrooms. Ivy looked stunned. "That's incredible. Are you going?" He didn't blink. "I'm not going alone. I want you to come with us." Her lips parted, but no words came out at first. "Elliot, I care about you a lot. But are you sure this isn't? This isn't about running away," he said calmly. "It's about starting something that Lydia never had the courage to build. A real life, with people who show up." Silence hung in the air for a moment before Ivy whispered, "Yes, I'd go. I'd go tomorrow if you asked." He nodded once. That was all he needed. The next 10 days moved fast. Grant finalized the divorce packet and custody terms. Elliot listed the house with a private firm, quietly, off-market. Within 48 hours, a cash buyer emerged. That part was easy. The hard part was letting go of the place where Lucas had taken his first steps, and where Lydia had taken her last steps toward him. Ivy helped pack what mattered. Lucas's toys, Elliot's workshop tools, some family albums. Everything else was either sold or donated. Lydia didn't even notice the listing. She hadn't driven by in weeks. The week of departure, Elliot sat at the kitchen table with Lucas and opened the map of the world. "See that spot right there? That's where we're going. Lisbon." Lucas's eyes lit up. "Can Ivy come?" Elliot smiled. "She's already got a suitcase packed, bud." The morning they left, the car service arrived at 6 a.m. Lucas was half asleep but grinning, clutching his stuffed raccoon and whispering to Ivy about the airplane snacks. Elliot left one envelope on the kitchen counter, addressed to Lydia. Inside, a letter, the signed divorce papers, and a USB drive with the photos. The letter was short. "You asked for space. I gave you 60 days. You didn't fight for me, for our son, or for this family. This isn't punishment. This is the consequence. I'm taking Lucas. He deserves a home built on presence, not performance. You'll have video calls on Sundays. That's all I'm willing to give." Elliot. As the plane lifted off the tarmac, Elliot looked out the window at the shrinking city skyline. The weight on his shoulders didn't vanish, but it shifted. It no longer dragged him down, pushed him forward. He looked over at Ivy, curled in the window seat with Lucas asleep on her lap. She caught him staring. "What?" He shook his head. "Nothing," he said. "Just glad you said yes." Above the clouds, Elliot Walker finally felt free. Lydia opened the front door expecting silence. What greeted her was absence. The furniture was gone. Walls bare. The house echoed now, hollow as her voice when she whispered, "What the hell?" In the kitchen, a single white envelope lay on the granite counter, her name written in Elliot's unmistakable hand. The sight of it hit harder than she'd expected. Not angry, not sarcastic, just final. She ripped it open. The letter was only 6 lines long, but each one landed like a stone. "You asked for space. I gave you 60 days. You didn't fight for me, for our son, or for this family. This isn't punishment. This is the consequence. I'm taking Lucas. He deserves a home built on presence, not performance. You'll have video calls on Sundays. That's all I'm willing to give." Elliot. Her legs gave out and she slid to the kitchen floor. Next to the letter was a USB drive. She hesitated, but curiosity overruled dread. She plugged it into her laptop, trembling fingers scrolling through the folders. Timestamps, location logs, photographs. One by one, the images loaded. Her at the club. Her with Ethan. The hallway. The car. She hadn't slept with him. But looking at those photos, she knew it didn't matter. The betrayal wasn't in the bed. It was in the choices, the games, the lies she'd convinced herself were harmless. She hadn't just broken Elliot's trust. She'd abandoned the version of herself who used to deserve it. Later that night, Lydia sat at the edge of her friend Maya's guest bed with the lamp off and her laptop open. She tried typing something a dozen times before she landed on it. Elliot, please. I was wrong. I see that now. I lost myself trying to be someone else, and I pushed away the only man who ever truly stood by me. I never stopped loving you, I just stopped showing it. I know I hurt you, but please, don't shut me out forever. I want to be part of Lucas's life. I want to be part of yours. Please give me a chance to fix this. She read it 5 times before hitting send. The reply came 2 days later. No greeting, no sign-off, just Elliot's voice, cool and steady. You didn't just hurt me, Lydia. You evacuated the marriage and took the lifeboat with you. You stood in front of our son and told him nothing was wrong, while planning your exit behind closed doors. I watched you flirt, disappear, break promises, and not once did you apologize until you saw what you lost. You don't get to rewrite the past. You don't get to erase the silence and start from the climax. You will have supervised video calls with Lucas every Sunday at 5 p.m. No exceptions. There will be no reconciliation, no shared holidays, no second chances. You left. I just finally caught up. Lydia didn't cry immediately. She didn't scream or curse him. She just sat there, still, like someone waiting for a train that had already passed. She opened her phone and scrolled through old photos. Lucas in the sprinkler, Elliot fixing the porch swing, a family selfie on Halloween, him dressed as a lumberjack, her as a witch, Lucas as a dinosaur in mid-roar. That was a world she had lived in and let die. And now it belonged to someone else. The morning sun in Lisbon painted the apartment in soft gold, spilling over the oak floors and across the white linen curtains that swayed with the ocean breeze. Elliot stood barefoot at the stove, flipping scrambled eggs while Lucas chased their small dog, Bean, down the hallway. Ivy's laughter followed behind them, her silhouette glowing in the kitchen doorway. This was the new rhythm, a rhythm Lydia never saw coming, and one she could never join. After 3 months abroad, the noise of the past had finally quieted. Elliot no longer checked his email expecting drama. Lydia had stopped sending long emotional messages. The Sunday calls were consistent but distant. Lucas smiled, told her about school and soccer and sunsets, and then wandered off without lingering. Elliot didn't intervene. He let it happen naturally. Some bonds unspool on their own. The apartment overlooked the coast. 3 bedrooms, high ceilings, and a balcony where Elliot often stood with Ivy after Lucas went to sleep, sharing quiet wine and watching ships glide toward the harbor. The company had offered him more than just a raise. It gave him an exit, a chance to reshape everything. And he took it without hesitation. What surprised him most wasn't how quickly he adjusted. It was how quickly peace replaced anger. That slow, simmering fire that once kept him awake at night now felt like a memory from someone else's life. He didn't forget what Lydia did, but it no longer drove him. He had something better to protect now. Ivy leaned against the counter, her hand resting on the small swell of her stomach. I think he's going to want a brother, she said, smirking. Elliot looked up from the skillet. I think he's going to be a great one, she grinned. You okay? Better than okay, he said, walking toward her, resting a hand on her belly. I feel settled. You've earned that. He kissed her forehead, then her lips, brief but certain. It wasn't infatuation. It didn't rebound. It was calm, real, built from the ashes of something that should have never lasted as long as it did. Outside, Lucas yelled, Breakfast smells like feet. Elliot laughed. That means I nailed it. They all sat down at the little round table on the balcony. 3 plates, 3 smiles, 1 life. Simple, strong, and built with purpose. Back in the States, Lydia sat alone in a 1-bedroom apartment. She had gone back to her old weight, her old routines. The party invites stopped. The selfies faded. And the silence was now hers to live in. Sometimes, she opened her laptop just to stare at the wallpaper. An old photo of Lucas on the beach. But the beach was different. Smaller. Grayer. Not like the ones in Lisbon. Elliot never looked back. Because when a man reclaims his peace, he doesn't walk backward through the fire. He walks forward, through salt air, soft laughter, and the life that waited for him the moment she let go.